you check the children. Show a little match sometimes.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
And you got Jaime and Fuego here.
And we are here to finally review, I guess finally, it's only been a few weeks, but it feels like forever for us for not seeing a movie right away.
Truly.
As soon as it's available. But we are here to talk about the sequel to a long-loved zombie movie on this channel, and
Absolutely.
one of the few that we almost universally liked, and you know, truthfully, we were really looking forward to this sequel. But we are talking about Train to Busan Peninsula.
Exactly, yes. Returning director Yeon Sang-ho, who also did the original one. He did even Seoul Station, the animated prequel to the first film. So expectations, at least for me, were a little higher. As much as I loved Train to Busan, and it was very distinctive, and when the zombie genre was starting to get a little bit tired, it did something distinctively different. This didn't really feel as much like that to me, unfortunately. So,
yeah, go ahead, finish your overall thoughts, because
Yeah.
I tend to agree, but we'll get there.
yeah, I mean, it was still emotional, but it dialed it up a little bit more so, I think, in certain times than the previous one, and it was kind of forced and didn't actually hit as hard as in that first film. The action was cool. It still was very well directed. Little too much CGI with the car chases for me a lot of the time, but I don't know. I didn't hate it, but I think the burden of expectation factored into this, and I at least commend them for doing something different in some ways as far as scale than the first film.
Yeah. I overall, for me, I do think that it was for sure inferior to the first movie, but it doesn't make it a bad movie. I just think it was unfortunately overwrought with CGI this time around. It felt like, and it felt very video game cutscene-y to me a lot of times.
Absolutely, especially with mowing over the zombies and
So
stuff
much
in the car.
driving and knocking over zombies in this movie. So much of it.
Lots of drifting and smashing into
So
things.
much of it, and it just loses its luster really fast. But yeah, overall, it just, I agree with Fuego. We'll talk about it a bit in story, but I think it went for that emotional kick way too early in the film with characters that you barely knew, and so it, like, right off the bat, it's raising red flags. Like, why are they trying to play this so hard so early? Like, what are we in for? You know, it makes you worried. And then the story to me did actually develop where I did like one segment of characters, but it just didn't feel as organically cohesive. It wasn't as organically cohesive as the first movie was, in my opinion. And
Definitely.
so, I don't know. That's my overall thoughts. The story is quite simply about a group of people that are sort of not tricked, but lured into a situation where these crime guys are looking to recover some money from a portion of Korea that is overrun with zombies and has been for 4 years. And so you know, there's a ton of convenience involved in this movie.
Unfortunately,
a ton of it.
Yes, massive amounts. In fact.
But then yeah, the characters go in to try and retrieve this money that is in a truck for this group of ne'er-do-wells, and you find other characters in the peninsula, as well as, of course, the zombies, which don't even seem to exactly follow the same rules as the zombies in the first movie. But yeah, that's the overall of the story as well. And the story to me felt a little, while it was an okay enough premise, it felt like it was a little haphazard in the way it tried to go about things. And it didn't all coalesce the way I was hoping it would. By the end, I did care about the characters that we were watching by the end, but ultimately there was a lot of shortcomings along the way for me, even insofar as the story is concerned. What about for you?
Yeah, I'm about the same, man. This felt so much like later seasons of The Walking Dead to me, in comparison with like the very first Train to Busan being very, as I said earlier, claustrophobic, different, super emotional, but they gained a lot of attention with that film, and I feel like there's a difference between writing for yourself, like out of your heart originally, and then in turn writing to an audience, which is what, with the amped up, just larger amounts of emotional stuff, stuff. I felt like that's what they were trying to do. I also do feel like they had the burden of trying to do something different, which is often I don't know, this was like the T2 Aliens sort of approach with like bigger, more action based instead of more strictly horror like the previous one, storytelling wise. And so I don't know, I did, like you, as opposed to not digging a lot of the character work initially, I did start to feel by the very end of it, especially one flashback scene during the climax where it's our lead character, our lead dude, essentially, and he's kind of remembering a conversation from earlier in the film. That particular scene, writing-wise, I was like, damn, I'm really feeling the emotional impact more so than maybe at any other moment, genuinely, in the film. So, I don't know, it's not perfect, but once again, commending them for making an action horror movie instead of like just straight-up horror movie, like in a lot of ways I thought the previous one was.
I have to admit, this is one of the early reviews. I feel like this is going to happen to me. Because, again, I say that I was frustrated with the story, but by the end, I had teared up twice.
Same.
I had teared up in 2 different moments in the movie, and one of them, though, I had to admit to myself, it's because my life is changing, and I've got a kid on the way now, and my girlfriend already has a 4-year-old girl who acts, is just a little bit younger than the little girl in this movie.
She's adorable.
And
too.
and so
man.
at one point the little girl is super sad, and it was breaking my heart because all I kept seeing was my girlfriend's daughter. And like I was like, oh no, is this what's happening to me? Because I can't watch cats die in movies because all I do is see my cats. So I don't like it. I close my eyes anytime. And now that I'm gonna have kids, am I not gonna be able to watch moments like this now? Like, I'm really worried about it. But
Marcia said the same thing, man.
She did. And I was like, no way I can change that much. But
like just about everyone I know with kids that's like really into films and art and stuff like that, when there's those connotations and connections, it hits you so much differently.
I don't know.
I've never been in that position.
Dude, it's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. All I kept picturing was her face, and I was like, oh, it was breaking my heart. So
that's a good
it was emotional. Yeah, exactly. So there was some, the emotion is carried by the actors.
Truly.
And once you realize kind of who the actual core group is, it takes a while to get there. It takes almost halfway through the movie before you get to that
third-ish. But
yeah, before you realize that it's just that, because
now I'm thinking
the story segments, and you're actually following 2 stories, and you're like, wait, now we're doing this.
Heroes and villains, I mean,
yeah,
more or less.
Yeah, well, I mean, but no, 2 of the good guys got split up, and then it's 2 separate stories for a while. And so anyway,
it was so Walking Dead to me.
It was very Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there was a lot of shadows of the governor and his.
That's why, and that's my favorite period of the show, and also the comic books. Well, although I haven't got through Whispers, but anyway, that's a different story. But yeah.
But yeah, the acting, though, I gotta say, there's a couple of little girls in this movie of varying ages, and then their mother. Who I knew was, there's a moment you see early in the movie, and I was like, that's going to come back later on, because we don't see what happened to these people. And rest assured, it does. And so I liked that group, and I liked our main guy. I don't know. I liked the other guy well enough as well that got sent off in the other direction.
Brother-in-law.
Yeah, but he was just a little too whiny through the whole movie.
Well, he was what kind of gave us some perspective into that was where I saw the biggest Walking Dead connections, I mean, one beat in particular that we see a few times in third or fourth season, somewhere there with Woodbury, right? And so, yeah, man, that was where I felt like, as opposed to the original one that had a lot of its own inspiration, this one was in fact like borrowing ideas and kind of retrofitting it. They still did it in a very, very awesome way visually, and we'll get to that eventually. But yeah, man, I didn't care for the villains very, very much in this. They didn't feel fearsome or scary.
They were
or
underdeveloped.
Anything. Yeah,
I mean, the only reason we knew they were scary was because other characters told us they were scary, and that was really it. So, there weren't villains in the first movie outside of the zombies. So like.
True.
This story is such that they felt that they needed to create a villain for the story because the zombies weren't enough.
Yeah.
And like that's where you start to get a little iffy. That's why always the origin movies and zombie timelines are the coolest, right? How everything breaks out. That story is always the most interesting rather than starting when everything's already done.
Yeah, and that's where lots of people like that first season of The Walking Dead so much, right? Because it was just like the initial chaos and everything. And
Same
actually,
with Dawn of the Dead's remake for me.
Yeah. This did also have some shades of oh boy, the one with Brad Pitt. God, what the hell was it?
World War Z.
World War Z. It had some. At least as far as the massive legions of CGI zombies when they were getting smashed into by vehicles and stuff.
They did some of that though in the first Train to Busan. I did rewatch it recently.
I haven't, and I wanted
There was
to,
quite a bit of that actually in the first one, but it was all in the train until you get to that one part where they're all like leaping onto each other and making like a zombie raft trying to get to the escaping train. There was nothing that cool in this. It felt like it was all CG zombie stuff, like for the most part, outside of a couple times when someone is trapped in something with a bunch of zombies around them. Outside of those times, it is so much CG, and so many times where the cars are CG plowing through them.
That was where I got the video game vibes.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it took me out of the movie because they did it so much. Usually it's one scene, maybe like a scene and a half, but they lean on this for, I mean, God, 15 to 20% of the movie was this.
Truly. And they had some Mad Max vibes that they were going for, but the one thing that was so great about Fury Road was those practical car chases and why they spent so much money on them.
You could see everything.
Yeah.
This is
it was dimly lit, so you
It was not
really...
only dimly lit, but I got stuff to say about the editing as well. Let's stick with finishing the acting, though. Okay. So go ahead. I like the little girls. I thought the main couple of adults were good, but some of the others were weaker.
Yeah, and I brought up the writing of the villains because I felt like their acting was subpar, but maybe that's more just the way that they were directed to actually do it, because there's like a tougher one, but there's a wormier one, and there's kind of, I don't know, I didn't really find either of them particularly fearsome or anything, like I was saying, and you know, they played their parts, whether poorly written or not. Family, though, was great. I actually did like the plight of the brother-in-law. It's interesting because I didn't recognize either of them at first when they
until they like flashback again, and I was
and
like,
the beards and everything,
it's
and I was
them.
like, yeah, exactly. But I don't know. I thought they had an interesting dynamic and solid chemistry. There is a certain just over the topness to the emotional moments from the entire ensemble that I will say, or maybe they just lingered on the crying and the sadness too long, so it started to feel kind of cheesy as opposed to just the moment. And then maybe better editing, like you were mentioning, could have I mean, just trimming those scenes a little bit, if that could have been helpful.
Segueing into the editing, then I think this movie was over edited to an extreme degree. I think there was fight scenes that you couldn't tell what was happening. There was tons of times where you couldn't tell what was actually happening with the cars and the zombies, and some stuff yes, but some stuff no, and it was really frenetic at times as opposed to being able to, follow the action. I legitimately couldn't at times. I was like, wait, how did that happen? Wait, what? I had that thought way more than I should in a movie like this, so that bummed me out.
Okay, so you felt like you were being bombarded, like somebody in that particular situation?
They didn't need to even do that. Like, I could tell that they had some good wide shots where the action looked good, but man, it was just over edited. They chopped too much when they really didn't need to, but that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah. Okay, so you
didn't feel that way? You didn't feel like you didn't get lost in the action sometimes?
I honestly liked kind of the panickiness of the way it was shot at times, but then in contrast to what I was saying just before, is that maybe they over-edited the action sequences and they under-edited the emotional scenes, and they just kind of focused on that a little more than I wanted. I don't know, just personal different critiques, I guess. So, yeah.
What about the effects? I think we need to talk about that. Well,
I still like the look of the zombies.
Okay, because I want to mention music too.
Yeah. I still think they look pretty dope. I did feel like there was a little bit less of a gore factor in this one than in the previous one.
For me too.
It's rated R, but I
quite frankly, with the amount,
could argue for PG.
I almost cut you off.
No,
like they always yell at me about. Go ahead.
No, but quite frankly, this I think could have passed for PG-13. You know, I mean, there's no sex, the violence isn't that hardcore. There's not a lot of blood, even when people are getting shot up. So, this could have really
shoot on.
Yeah. There was bite marks.
Yeah, there was really like they didn't focus on the people getting. It was just a lot of zombies jumping at people and them falling out of frame, or you
getting
know,
piled
or
on,
attacking.
or...
Like if the camera is like where it's at now, they would jump and then they would attack right here, and you couldn't see anything, and then they'd cut away. And that happened over and over and over again, and you never actually saw any of the zombies like rip flesh out or anything like that.
Not at all. This was far from any sort of
Much
Savini
tamer.
work or
Much tamer.
Yeah, big time. And there's also even there's a deliberate cutaway in this too, where there's a pole that's going to go through somebody's head, and they cut right when it's about to
rated
happen.
R. Why?
It just makes me think maybe they were, I don't know, maybe not trying for R for this, because I felt like they really held back, man. Even the lack of effects and makeup and all of that stuff needs
You're
to
right.
be,
I frankly
needs to
don't
be
know why
mentioned
it was
in this.
given an R.
Yeah.
I really don't.
I don't understand it.
But that's a fair point. So the effects, we touched on the fact that it's way too much CG, especially compared to the first movie. There's one cool practical effect that you see in the trailer. It's this mound of zombies that comes scrambling out of a tunnel.
It's very creepy.
And then doesn't do a damn thing. And then actually legitimately disappears from the scene. Because if you remember, the rainbow guy shows up.
I thought
and
they were
like
all...
the remaining 4 come back, but that mound has disappeared.
Well, they were all jumping off of it. Like they
were they though?
From what I
were they
assumed
though?
is that
the
they
mound
had them...
was there almost the entire scene, and then it was gone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I thought each of them were jumping off one at a time.
It didn't
or
seem that
something.
way to me. It seemed like there was some coming from behind the mound, and then that. Anyway, you tell me if you disagree. If you watched it, what did you think?
It was just because they had them stacked on top of each other, like in this small little enclosure, and then so they all came out as one like hybrid.
I get what you're saying, but the ones that were attacking were the ones that ran beside it, because
there were others that were coming behind.
That throng of zombies never shrank. It was always the same size. Anytime it was on camera, it was always the same size.
I just assumed off camera that
you were giving it the benefit of the doubt.
I know,
what you were
which
doing.
is true.
Now, music-wise, I do want to say that
I dug the score.
I dug the score at times, but I feel like again they were overplaying their hand, because
with the far eastern.
No. I'm talking about with the overly loud emotional music at the very beginning when you're not feeling that emotion, and they're like, no, the music is telling you must feel this way, you must feel sad.
I felt
it's
like that.
sad right now. That's
like
what
that,
the music was doing to me the whole time.
I felt like that about most of those big overwrought, as we were saying, emotional sequences where you're supposed to feel really sad, and they just, man, they laid it on thick.
Dude, they turned
like,
the volume up on
time.
that score at those times, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So
well, it was also the type of instrumentation that they used there. I mean, nice sweeping strings and things like that. But still, it felt like they were overdoing it.
It did. So I think that's really where we've landed for the most of this movie. Is it was just overdone, over-edited, over-scored.
Sometimes success
over
does this,
CGified, you know what I mean?
This is kind of it, and it happens with bands, it happens with directors. This almost feels kind of like sequelitis to me, a little bit. Dare I say it does?
It felt like it was just trying
Not
to.
that I hated it or anything.
No, and again, I teared up 2 different times, so there were beats that worked, but overall, it just felt like a shadow of its former installment. You know what I mean? So.
I concur, unfortunately, but yes, I mean, obviously, art is subjective. Check it out, see for yourself. You may take the heck out of it. I've seen critics really flip-flop in both ways. I've seen some like big, like THR and some of the bigger mainstream publications not be very kind to it, and then the genre fans are more accepting of it.
Yeah.
So who knows? Make up your own mind.
I mean, I'm very, very honest. Most of the movie felt a little rote, but it did get me emotionally by the end a couple of times. So take that as you will.
Truly,
you know
truly. I mean? And do you want to brave a theater? It's something we mentioned a little bit in
That's
our
what we had to do to watch
theater.
it. So.
Yeah, I mean, mask up, stay safe. If you don't feel comfortable, don't feel pressured.
I felt okay because we were literally on like the seats. We were the last to come in.
And there's like
and we were on the seats closest to the
theater.
exit, so we could like sit down and then bolt before anyone else passed us and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, empty rows behind each people. I don't know. They're trying at the theaters, and you know, that's all that you can do. And so yeah, not much else.
So guys, I think that's gonna do it for our review of Train to Busan Presents Peninsula.
Yeah.
Odd title.
Yeah.
But yeah, let us know.
That
they had to have that brand
reference of
recognition.
the brand,
yeah. Why don't you guys let us know in the comments down below if you have seen this? What did you think? If you haven't seen it and you've made it this far into the video, has our opinion made you want to see it or not want to see it? Let us know what those thoughts are in those comments. While you're down there, if you're so inclined, click the link to our Patreon where you can actually go and support the channel more directly, but also order us to review movies you want to see us review or do commentaries and stuff like that.
Tell us what to do.
Indeed. So thank you guys very much for watching. Until next time, I've been Cecil Laird.
And gracias, I've been Jaime and Fuego.
And remember, stay scared.